Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Y si mira los domingos, mira que ya viene ya. A ver, tacho de nuevo, que los domingos quiere tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Prepárate,
Aleluya.
prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Oye, mira, yo te digo, mira que ya viene ya. A ver, tacho de nuevo, que los domingos quiere tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate. Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Oye, mira los domingos, mira que ya viene ya. A ver, tacho de nuevo, que los domingos quiere tumbar.
Prepárate, preparada, prepárate.
Háblale.
Prepárate, preparada, que la fortuna te va a tumbar.
Oye, mira, yo te digo, mira que ya viene ya. A ver, tacho de nuevo, que los domingos quiere tumbar.
Greetings and welcome. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the CSU Monterey Bay campus sits on the unceded territory of the Rumsen Ohlone people. I'm Professor Umi Vaughan, Faculty Director of the Center for Black Student Success at CSUMB. The center is about engaging and empowering African diaspora students to ensure that they succeed at CSU Monterey Bay. This presentation is the first offering from the Daniel Hill Williams Black Education Series. This series brings to campus distinguished experts to engage us on a variety of current topics in the field of public health, with a special focus on Black experiences and perspectives. Dr. Williams was an African-American physician who was among the first to successfully complete open heart surgery on a patient. Tonight, we celebrate his legacy by talking about food health and how to avoid open heart surgery. Remember, audience members, that you can submit questions through the chat on YouTube. If you have questions for tonight's guest or for me, feel free to write them there. I'm very, very excited to share with you guys our kickoff guest, chef, musician, educator, Roberto Pérez. Welcome, Roberto.
Oh man, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. We started off with Booyah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the band here from Chicago doing Afro-Puerto Rican music. And so thank you, Professor. I appreciate it. It's such a blessing to be here. And we're gonna do arroz con pollo today. We're gonna do arroz con pollo. We're gonna do it from scratch. We're making it from scratch. So we're doing the seasonings. We're going to make our mirepoix, which actually means it's the foundation, the sofrito. If you know Creole cooking, you may know it as the Trinity of cooking, of Creole cooking, or if you're from the British Islands, like Trinidad, you may know it as green seasoning. And so it has all these names actually in Nigeria and West Africa. It may be the atolilo. It really depends on where you're from, man. But the beautiful thing about food is that it really links people.
Yes, sir. Roberto, you're such a great fountain of information and such a great community worker. I can't wait to leave you alone with our audience members. But before I do, I want to ask you just a few questions. I became a fan of yours seeing some of your cooking shows online through some of my friends on the East Coast. For us here on the West who may not know you, I want you to please tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got into cooking, who were some of the people who taught you how to cook, all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think um, I want to definitely in this piece and in me talking, I want to definitely honor the women that often teach men, and often you see men, especially in Puerto Rico today, you see the men at the forefront. I remember a list of the top chefs in Puerto Rico, and all 10 were men. And I know, guaranteed, that they all learned from women. And so I definitely want to honor the women that definitely have always been at the forefront of cooking and teaching us. In Puerto Rico, historically, it has always been uh, people who is going to cook, and usually the answer is not me. That means that a lot of folks that were as servants at the time or poor folks, they were the people that were cooking for those elitists. And so often, there is no doubt that this country, as well as the countries of the Caribbean, that definitely that print of Africa is there definitely. And so we'll see that as we cook our food today, our arroz con pollo.
Thank you. You have founded a great organization that's done some important work with youth and with all kind of folks. Tell us about your organization and its mission, Roberto.
So I definitely always want to restore a lot of these old recipes. But and I want to, you know, give my testimony about more than 10 years ago, I got sick with cirrhosis of the liver because of a workout supplement that I was taking. And I used food to heal myself, to get better, to come back. Food was medicine, and I knew that I was gonna devote myself to really teaching people how to cook without synthetics and to be old school and go back to the roots as far as cooking goes. So
Beautiful.
that's a lot of the things that I do. I do a lot of the educational part of that, Professor.
Beautiful. Just as an idea, because a lot of students here at CSU Monterey Bay are really invested in service learning, for example, please talk about some of the, venues or situations, contexts where Urban Pilón has shared this important information.
So now because of COVID, everything has been pushed online. So you can always find me online, and you can always see kind of the endeavors that I'm in through Instagram or Facebook under Urban Pilón. If you guys don't know a pilón, this is one of my favorite pilons. This one is from South Africa. This is my great grandmother's here. And so this is something that's a pilon. So my brand is called Urban Pilon, being that I'm from Chicago. I was raised in Chicago with my family from southern Puerto Rico, from Ponce. And so I've always been somebody who, as a lot of folks from the diaspora, we want to really work hard on not losing our roots. And so that's a lot of the work that I'm doing, especially in the focus of the Afro-Caribbean traditions that have been a big part of Puerto Rican cooking and Puerto Rican music and culture.
Yes, sir. So with that, kind of baseline information about you in mind, I want to go ahead and just pass you the ball fully and take us into your process, take us into the magic of the great food that you know how to make.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if folks are cooking along. I'm hoping that you are. If you are not, I'm hoping that you will definitely get a lot of information here. So how to make your own adobo from scratch, how to make sofrito from scratch. And so, if you really love someone, this is a great way to show them that you love them is through food. This is such an intimate act to cook for somebody, especially taking it and cooking something just where you use no synthetics, where you just do everything naturally, and you taste that. People taste that. And so that's the beauty of food, is that it can also be served as a provider. It can serve as an act of love. And so that's kind of what we're going to do today.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, should I continue now, Professor, we could go over really quickly over the adobo and the sofrito, which is gonna be the base.
Yeah.
And now remember, there's all these variations that you can make, you can omit, basically because that's what food is. If you don't like something like cumin or turmeric, then you don't have to use it. That's the beauty of food. But I will go through some of the history of it. The first thing when we're working with preserving food, with the preservation of food, many times the first thing that is mentioned is salt. Salt, because it preserves food, it helps preserve food, it takes out the moisture out of food. And so if you can take the moisture out of food, it is less likely to build bacteria. So the first thing when we're making adobo would be the salt. So you can omit, we would go in with 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I like using sea salt, natural salt. The Himalayan salt is what's really, popping right now. That's what people are using, is the Himalayan salt, which is actually pink because of the mines that it comes from. It's actually pink mines in the Himalayan. So there's other types of salts that are gonna come out. I have no doubt about that. Food is like that, where it's just a fad. It's definitely uh, trends. And so right now the Himalayan salt is the one that's popping. So 1.5 teaspoons of the salt, and then the pepper. I like using this pepper grinder here, where I have the peppercorns there, and then I turn this, and then it brings out the fresh peppers. So if you're in a food competition or something like that, you could definitely use this. And so now we're gonna go in with only 1 teaspoon. So we went 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of the pepper. The next thing that we would use is the garlic. Garlic's really good for your heart. Um, Garlic has a lot of nutrients, and so I like using garlic. I definitely, whenever a recipe says 1 clove of garlic, don't trust it. Okay, so garlic definitely. So we would do 1 teaspoon of garlic. The next thing we would use is oregano. In the Spanish Caribbean, you do see oregano often. You don't see it so much in the British Islands, but oregano would be 1 teaspoon as well. The next thing, now we are reducing the amount. So we would go actually to a 1/2 teaspoon, and we would go to a 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. Turmeric is an ancient ingredient, but it's also so good. It will not only give you food color, the natural coloring in your food, but it also is an anti-inflammatory. It's also good for folks that maybe have arthritis, that have gout, that have swelling. Turmeric is great. Turmeric is also related to ginger. And these are superfoods. These are foods that are great for you. Why not add these things? So we're adding natural color. We're also adding all these great nutrients. So we would do a 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. The next ingredient would be a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. Now, cumin is one of the most popular ingredients in the world. If you have ever had taco seasoning, cumin's in there. If you have ever had chili, Cumin is almost always in there. In Mexican cooking, is almost always in there. In Texan cooking, Tex-Mex food, definitely always in there. But it's also one of the most ancient ingredients in the world. Now, it used to be used as a preservation of the Egyptian pharaohs. So a lot of this food was actually used to preserve, and in this case, it was used to preserve the Egyptian pharaohs. Don't believe me? You could ask your Miss Google, and you could check it out. It's definitely there. Cumin is one of those ingredients. So smell it. Cumin goes a long way. And if you don't like it, then you could omit it. Now, the other ingredients that I would add is always the reddenings, the natural reddenings. Don't use things like red 40 or the yellow dyes. That stuff is actually called the rainbow of risk. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's actually illegal in a lot of countries, the rainbow of risk. So I would definitely say stay away from a lot of these things, a lot of these dyes. Read the backs, read your labels. And again, I know because this happened to me from using synthetics that I got sick, and actually I had the shutdown of my liver. So um, there are some food colorings that are natural. We mentioned one of them with turmeric. Another one is a classic around the world would be paprika. Paprika is, and you can use smoked paprika, especially for vegetarians. That smoked paprika, it'll give you that smokiness that often meat will give you. And so smoked paprika, really good. You can do a half teaspoon of that. Another one, which was really popular in the Caribbean, would be the achote, the anaro seed. And that was used by the natives. That was used by the natives of the Caribbean, and the natives would use it. It was often called the lipstick tree because people would use it to as makeup. And so, yeah, that is another natural coloring right now, and you could find it ground up. Before, when we were younger, we would use the seeds and strain it, and there was always some oil on the stove, and it was a hot mess. But now we do have it ground up. So that is my spiel on adobo. Making it from scratch, you already know why we would do it from scratch, because unfortunately, a lot of corporations are in the stores and they're doing a lot of things that can hurt us. And so read labels, but now you have this information, and you could make it yourself. So just to recap, we can do 1.5 teaspoons of, and you could just use fractions. You know, if you're making large amounts, you could use more. So we're doing 1.5 teaspoons of the salt. We're doing 1 teaspoon of the pepper, 1 teaspoon of the garlic, 1 teaspoon of the oregano. Now we're reducing. We're doing half teaspoon of turmeric. We're doing half teaspoon of cumin, and then we're going with the food coloring, the natural one. We're going with the naturals, with the paprika, or you can use achote. If you like spice, then you can do cayenne as well, and that's not only going to give you spice, but that's also going to give you coloring. So you can do that as well. So if you guys have any questions or anything, please put it in the chat. You know, I don't want to feel like I'm here just talking and talking. I want to, just make sure that I'm answering the questions and I'm helping as much that I can. We're gonna make this together. In cooking, there's a term often used in kitchens. It's called mise en place. Mise en place, that means that you have arranged everything and everything is kind of put in its place. Everything is arranged and put in its place. So that's what mise en place means. That means get your stuff together. So that's kind of what I did. I have shredded some cabbage. I have shredded some carrots. And now I'm going to get these containers out the way, and then we can start our food. So if you guys have any questions about adobo, please let me know. And I want to help you out. Adobo also would be, like an all-purpose seasoning. You could put that in soup. You could put that in any kind of stews. You could put that in the rice that we're gonna make today. Actually, that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, that's our adobo. Now we'll go over a little bit with our sofrito. So sofrito, the first time that it was documented in Puerto Rico was at the turn of the 19th century, before that. And so it was actually called, at that time, before it was given the name sofrito, it was called fondo, which means like the foundation, the fondo, the bottom of the pot. And so this is basically the start of our food. For Caribbean cooking, no matter what island you're at, you're gonna need a base, and you're gonna have to come with all of this freshness and these ingredients, or else you're not doing it. It's the same way in Creole cooking. You're gonna have to come with the Trinity. So you're gonna have to come. The Trinity is what? The Trinity is onion, is pepper, and it's celery. And so usually followed up by garlic. So if you don't have that, then you're not really, that's your base. That's your base. That's where you're gonna get a lot of your flavor. It's like building a house. You're gonna have to have a good foundation, right? And so that's what sofrito is. So I'll go over really quickly sofrito. So this is the way I do it. And these are pretty much the traditional ingredients that you would have. You would have one onion. A yellow onion is cool. It's a little bit sweet. The Spanish onion, that works. And then we would use 10 garlic cloves. And this would go in a food processor. Back in the day, actually, folks used to use a pilón, and that's how they would make their sofrito. Today, we use a food processor, we use a blender. I don't necessarily like my sofrito too ground up, like it's a smoothie. I like it to have some texture. I got teeth still, until I get older, then that's cool. But okay, we got one onion, we have some garlic, and then we have these are called pimiento peppers. So the pimiento peppers, or the ají, is also very key to sofrito. So you could find this again in the different islands, depending on where you're at. They'll call it different names. So it may be called a cooking pepper, but in Puerto Rico we called it ají or ají dulce. Ají actually is a Taino word. The Tainos are the natives of Puerto Rico, and it means pepper in the Arawak language. And so, what's really cool about ají and peppers for me is that it's also a symbol of resilience. The hot peppers and the hot ajís, what the Tainos would do to keep the Spanish away would be smoke them. They would smoke them, and then it would ward the Spanish away that hated it. And so to me, it's always been a symbol of resilience. Back when I first started cooking, I don't know why, but now everybody likes hot stuff. And I love hot stuff too, but that wasn't always the case. And so, like, spicy and hot has always been kind of like a symbol of resilience, kind of like something that I've always loved. And so ají is definitely something that I'm always gonna have in my food. So these are the herbs, and this one is cilantro. This is really popular. You may see it in Mexican cooking, in whenever you're gonna have some good carne asada, you're gonna see cilantro. And then this is one that you'll find also in not only in Puerto Rico but in the other islands. And this is called, in Puerto Rico, it's called recao, or it may be called culantro. Also, in Vietnamese cooking, you'll see this also. So if you cannot find this, you don't have a Caribbean store close to you, you can always find this at the Asian markets because it's always cooked in pho. So in Vietnamese cooking, it's always in there. In British Island, green seasoning is always in there. This is recao, culantro, shadow benny also in the British Islands. So yeah, so that is sofrito. And then what we would do is we would take that and also the peppers, we would definitely take the seeds out, just so you know. A lot of folks have a lot of, it may give some people some gastro issues. So I always I clean them up and I take, that's the most tedious part of making sofrito, is usually taking the seeds out of these peppers. So if you have any questions regarding sofrito, hit me up on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you find me, Urban Pilón, and I definitely help. In some parts and some islands, they will also put a hot pepper in their sofrito, in their base. You may see lime, you'll see parsley. Some people will put ginger. Some people will put mustard seed. It really depends on where you're at on the island. Some people will, may have mentioned lime. It really depends on where you're at in the world. And so to make the sofrito. But this was my variation of how to make sofrito. And so again, if you have any questions regarding that, please let me know. Okay, let's get now to the cooking. I have already talked about adobo. I have already talked about sofrito. And now we're going to get to our food. I have some of the food. So what I've done is I've shredded up this is half a cabbage and 1 carrot, right? And so if you guys know Haitian cooking, there's something that's always in Haitian cooking called epis, EPIS. No, not epis. Uh, so epis is also the sofrito from Haiti, but why am I drawing blank on the cabbage that is always done in Haiti? Oh man, in Central America it's called cortido. And so, anyways, so there's different variations of this. This is cabbage, and now what we're gonna do is also we're going to add vinegar. So what the vinegar is gonna do is not only gonna break it down, but it's also gonna preserve it. So when you have vinegar in food, any food scientist will tell you that the pH level rises, and that means that it could sit on the shelf. If we didn't have refrigeration, this could actually stay out and it'll be okay for a few weeks. So, but we have refrigerators, so we can put it away. So, all right. So, some of the things, one of the things that I'm going to put in here is also an onion. In the meantime, if we actually bought frozen gandules, the pigeon peas, then we should put them on the stove, and we should salt them up like the Caribbean Sea, like a beach in the Caribbean. And that's how much salt we would put in it, and then we would cook that. So usually when they're frozen, they're fresh. They're frozen, but they're fresh. They're flash frozen. So that's gonna need about a half hour. So the first thing we would do is get those gandules going. So gandules is actually gandul, guandul. It's actually a Bantu word. So there would not be arroz con gandules or rice and pigeon peas if without Africa. So there's gandules. There's so much food that I think in Puerto Rico alone, where like the national dish mofongo. Actually, if there was, mofongo and plantain, those are all things native to Africa that have come to Puerto Rico. So, all right. So this is the way I cut an onion. I'm going to cut it in half. And then how do you avoid from crying is we're going to take that onion and you're going to flip it down that way. And then that's how you're going to deal with it, because the inside of the onion is what's going to make you cry. So I'm gonna cut the ends off, and then in the red onion, there's usually that white pit there. I usually take it out. I'm gonna skin it, and then I'll cut this here, and then this is gonna go into our cabbage salad. And so then, because remember, we do have that garlic, that vinegar. That vinegar is what's actually going to cut it down. It's gonna soften it up a little bit. Also, we're gonna put salt in there. So, okay, we have the onion. We have 1 cup of vinegar. 1 cup of vinegar. And again, that vinegar is really going to be what's going to take a lot of that bite out. So that's why this is the first thing that we're doing. So we're going to take some salt. We're going to be generous with the salt because the salt is also going to break it down. We'll be generous with the salt. And then we're going to add some fresh pepper. We're going to mix that up. Also, one of the things that I have not added yet is the hot pepper. So what's spicy in a hot pepper is the inside, is the seeds and that little membrane that's in there. So that's actually what's spicy. So we're gonna, if you like spice, then keep it. If you do not like spice, then I would suggest maybe not using it, or maybe you don't even have to use a hot pepper. But I like spice. Again, I use hot peppers in my stuff. So again, in the chat, if you guys have any questions, let us know, please. I do Caribbean cooking classes in Chicago, and I do them online now because that's what this has all been reduced to. We can't get together. We got to be safe. So as I'm cutting this, if you notice, I'm keeping the nose of the knife downward, so that way I can chop easy. See, I'm keeping the nose down, and then all I'm moving is actually my right hand. So that's how I'm mincing this. So I'm just using my right hand, sweeping it back, sweeping it back. See, the nose of the knife just stays down. All right, so that's gonna go in there. The vinegar has gone in there already. Now we're just gonna mix that up, and we're gonna let it sit. We're just gonna let that sit while that is while the other stuff is cooking, and then by the end it should have broken down a little bit. So, and the colors are really nice. You know, we have in Central America, often what you'll see is that they'll put some oregano in it. If you guys have ever had pupusas, this is really similar actually to what you'll have on top of pupusas. This is a great garnish. Add a lot of crunch and a lot of freshness to your food. In Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, you'll see this. So in Haiti, man, it was killing me. In Haiti, it's called pickles. And so pickles are usually really nice and spicy. You could also add your adobo to this, a little bit of adobo. That'll work too. And so you want that vinegar to get to touch all of this. You could also add a little bit of red cabbage if you want. That'll actually give it a really beautiful color, but it's already really beautiful just with what we have here. So pickles in Haiti, in Central America, it would be cortido or encurtido in pickling. So that's what that would look like. We're gonna put it aside and then let the magic happen with the vinegar. And then we're gonna do our arroz con pollo. Arroz con pollo, what's cool about arroz con pollo is that it's everything actually in one pot. And here I have one pot. Um, and so in here we're gonna have chicken. We're going to have beans. We're gonna have gandules. We're gonna have the sofrito. We're gonna have the dry seasonings. We're gonna have all that stuff. We're gonna have a little bit of salsa de tomate. Um, you know, it can be just an all-in-one type of meal. And so probably one of the theories is that, you know, if you have ever been somewhere where maybe they didn't have a indoor kitchen, usually they would have one burner outside, a fire burner or a fire stove. We would call it a fogón. And so, you know, it's usually with wood, a wood stove. And so usually it's one burner. And so if you don't have four burners, because four burners for a lot of people around the world is very, very convenient and it's a luxury. And so this is how you can do it all in one burner. You just have one burner, you just make it all in one pot. And so that's what we're doing today. And so this is something that pretty much has been done all over the world. And so this is kind of really similar to that. This is arroz con pollo. So what we're going to start with is we're going to get our, so usually when you're doing in the Caribbean, you're going to use a duchy, what they would call a duchy, a Dutch oven, or a caldero. So this is usually what the rice one would look like. But this is an induction stove, and it's really hot. And so let me put some oil in there. So this is usually what you would make your rice in. The reason why we would use this is because it's usually U-shaped, and you usually see that is that these are U-shaped. And why is that? Is because then the rice does not stick to the inside, to the corners. If you had a square pot, or not necessarily a square pot, but a pot that had corners and ridges, then rice would definitely get stuck in there. In here, it won't. And so when you bring this out, people take you serious because this is a real rice pot. This is a duchy, a Dutch oven pot. So this is also round bottom. So, and by the way, I have been seasoning my chicken for about 4 hours. And we're going to brown that chicken. I have it, and I have not taken it out of the fridge. So usually what you want to do is they call it temp your food. And so I'm going to take that out, and we're going to put that in there. And that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with our chicken. So we have we got our chicken there. So it's been seasoned. So I've also always been taught, use this too, use that seasoning in India or Indian chefs. An Indian chef taught me that's called the masala. So we're gonna use the masala too. But we're gonna brown our chicken.
Hey, Roberto, I got a question for you, man.
Of course.
I wonder, is there a preference for cuts of meat with bone in or boneless fillets? Because we have that option here, but sometimes people seem to think that the bone lends something to the flavor or the consistency.
Yeah, so the bone has the bone marrow, and the bone will definitely give you more flavor. As far as me and preference goes, my favorite part of the chicken is also the chicken thigh. The chicken thigh usually has more it's more juicy. But again, it's everybody's preference. It's really what folks what their preference is. But I prefer chicken thigh, and but there's also ways if you're gonna do boneless uh, the breast, then there's ways that you could brine that. They call it brining it, where you put it in salted water. And when you put it in salted water, what happens is that it absorbs it. They call it impregnates the uh, the chicken breast with the salt, and therefore, what happens when we have a lot of salt is we retain water. So our bodies, right? So that's exactly what happens with the chicken breast, is that it gets impregnated with all the liquid, and then that's a way that a trick where you can actually have more moist chicken breast. And I will tell you, for the folks that travel the world, you guys all know that the chicken breasts in the United States are the biggest in the world. Going anywhere else, you're never gonna see some chicken breast that big. You're never gonna see that. And the chicken wings here, man, they're huge. And I know we don't like to be skimpy with food, or we might complain about it, but I always think about it. I'm like, man, that is
It's
huge.
not quite right, huh? Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah, it's just not right. It just ain't right. So, so I'm gonna wait for this to brown a little bit. And what happens is, like, don't get impatient with it. As it cooks, what happens is that a crust develops, and se despega, or despega would mean it despega. Profesor, ayúdame. Se despega. It actually develops the crust, and then it doesn't stick anymore to the bottom. So that's what happens. So just be patient with your food, and you'll notice that as it cooks. And also, chicken has a lot of liquid, has a lot of liquid. So you'll notice if it you'll notice also water will come out also. It's already smelling beautiful in here. So just getting ready for go everything else. We got salsa de tomate. We have our sofrito, which has onions and garlic. We have our adobo, which we made. We have our chote, which is the reddening. We have some bay leaves. We have some olives. And of course, we have the gandules.
Hey Roberto, the same way that you just tilted that chicken to show us, will you put the adobo and the sofrito in that side camera same way so we can get a good look at it?
Yeah. So this is what my sofrito looks like after it's been ground up.
Nice.
And then, so this is achote, the red one, and then the adobo. And then there's some bay leaves there too.
Wonderful. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
What, Roberto, is the connection in Puerto Rico or in your life between food and music? How do those two things intersect?
So we learned well, I've always been somebody who sought out culture as far as it pertaining to my life and to me. And so um in historically in Puerto Rico at the bombas, there was always food. And so we created events, but we never really thought about food. But you know, yeah, I'm a purist. I love to do things the way I feel like they used to be done. I just like that.
Yes,
That's just me.
yes.
So, um, uh, at those bombas, there was always food, and so we created events where there was food, where there was live music, and there was rum. There was always the three, and so just like the bombas, and so that's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So that's how we used to do an event pre-COVID. We used to do an event called Roots and Rum, and that's how it started. That's how it started. When we put them both together, we didn't really know. I didn't know in my journey in my life how they were gonna fit together, but that's how they fit together.
What, Roberto, is your favorite song from the um, Bomba con Bulla live CD? What's your favorite one of yours?
My favorite song. There is it called Empatillas? Is there a song called Empatillas in there?
I think so. Let's see.
If there is, that's probably one of my favorite songs. It's from the South. My family's from the South, so I'm always trying to rep the South.
One of my favorite people in the world, one of my favorite Puerto Ricans definitely is Ponceña, who studied at University of Michigan with me, named Zaire Bince. Very nice woman, very talented.
Yeah, yeah, man.
En patillas son los prados, en arroyo son los
That's the one,
coras, y
Professor.
hasta los vestidores, esos son los hombres nombrados.
En Patillas son los prados, en Arroyo son los coras, en Guayama los servidores, esos son los hombres nombrados.
Los vestidores son de guayaba, los vestidores son de guayaba,
Roberto,
los
who was Doña Lula
vestidores
in
son de
your life?
guayaba, esos son los hombres nombrados.
So,
En
Doña
Patillas son los
Lula
prados, en
is a
Arroyo
woman from Loíza where she focuses really on the Afro Taino culture of cooking a specific style which is called the boudin. And so it's a very particular style. And so in 2013, I went to Puerto Rico. I sought her out, spent time with her. She taught me how to cook specific dishes. If you ever look at the Instituto de Cultura and you look up Doña Lula, then yeah, she's pretty popular. She has cookbooks, but she's holding on to a tradition and sharing a tradition that unfortunately, if it's not passed on, then it's gonna be lost. And so
Wow.
that's why I do the work that I do, because I don't
Hmm.
want this stuff to die.
Yeah. what is it about Loíza and Ponce that make them special even within the island of Puerto Rico?
I'm gonna say blackness. I mean the music. A lot of great musicians and actors and the arts really thrive in those two locations. Um, and so that's the place also where a lot of music was born. Both of those locations and the arts and carnival. Yeah, the drum making, all of that. I think it just really it thrives, but a big part of it is its blackness, and that's the truth. So Professor, I'm gonna start actually adding stuff. That chicken is doing really well, and it's gonna continue to cook. So I'm gonna put the sofrito in there, and that sofrito, I have two heaping uh, tablespoons of sofrito. I like using a lot of sofrito. It's just gonna give a lot of flavor. And again, this is the foundation of our plate of our one pot meal is that sofrito, and it's already got all that beautiful color in there of that color of flavor, that browning, which I love.
Mira que vuela. Un blesa. Ay, yo me voy para la playa. Ay, qué mujer tan bandolera. Un blesa. Un blesa. Un blesa. Ay, yo me voy
So we're going in with 4 ounces of the salsa de tomate. I don't like to waste food. I like to use, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water and put that in there. I know it's really not a lot, but I don't like wasting food. One of the big projects that I do every Wednesday is actually a mutual aid where we feed people that have food insecurities in Chicago and some of its poorest communities. And so, yeah, I just can't be throwing food away. So it's going real nice. Soon I'm gonna also use this little masala that's here. I'm gonna put that in there too. That's flavor as well.
casamiento y no te lo quieres dar. Como una buena cristiana por iglesia nada más. Ella quiere casamiento por
Hey, Roberto,
iglesia
I have
nada
another
más.
question. I've had a lot of experience traveling to Cuba, and I even lived there for a time. I wonder, like, if you, as a chef, would speak about some of the similarities, but more so even differences between Puerto Rico food and Cuban food.
Yeah, I had I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to Cuba, and I cooked at a restaurant there called Paladar, called Sony Rumba, I think it was called,
Okay.
and it was actually in a pueblo called Trinidad. And
Okay.
you know, Trinidad is kind of touristy, so so I had the opportunity to do that. In when it pertains to music, I have always looked to Santiago and in Guantanamo, where there's these traditions of a music called tumba francesa. And tumba francesa, in my opinion, is very parallel to bomba and the music that I do in Puerto Rico. And so, yeah, you definitely, Professor, you definitely see these links, especially throughout the Caribbean. And those communities were built or were formed by Haitians after the Haitian Revolution. So it's amazing how it all links together.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking of is like Cubans really don't deal with spicy food at all. The Puerto Rican food admit a little bit more like picante, you know?
I'm trying to bring that back because I like
Oh,
picante. I'm trying to bring it back.
got
And remember, I don't know if you remember me talking about ají and its symbolism. And Professor, I had, and there's a lot of things that I love about Cuba. I really feel like education, and I really love it. I'm spoiled in the United States because here I can find so many things, and there I really struggled to find a lot of things that I was used to. And that's not necessarily a criticism of them, but a criticism of me and how spoiled I am and how spoiled we have become to really find 11 types of Oreo cookies, knowing you really only need one, two, but in Cuba things were very hard to find.
it.
So the cookbooks that I did find in Cuba, they're a little bit outdated in my opinion. But I definitely seen that Puerto Rico, because of its access to things like internet and travel, the food has really evolved a
Hmm.
lot. What I don't want is for people to forget uh, those roots and where it came from. So I feel like Cuba can be a little bit more grounded as far as culture because they're also forced to. And I don't want Puerto Rico to forget about those things. Yeah.
Yeah. How did they dig the
Does
meal that
does
you
that
put
make
down?
sense, Professor?
For sure, for sure. In
What's that?
in Cuba, how did they receive the meal that you put down for them? Did they dig it?
So I was only able to talk about some of the things that I had done and show them pictures. And
Oh,
then next thing you know, I was in the kitchen but I was really following a lot of their ingredients, using the things that they were doing.
got
I
it.
was just following the executive chef. So there were a few things that I dabbled with and I made it my style. But
Okay.
I think yeah. So I don't feel like I was able to really show them because then again I was a little bit intimidated because I couldn't find a lot of the things that I needed. I was almost like, uh, yeah, I was stumped a little bit.
Desesperada, sí. Mhm.
Desesperado, man. I was a little bit desesperado de verdad. I was really for real, just really trying to grasp everything that was going on.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we have the gandules here, and the way I'm going to use these gandules is I'm going to use the hot water. I don't like necessarily uh putting cold water in my food. So because it kind of holds back the cooking process. So that's why I boiled my gandules, which were fresh. And then when you're making gandules, you want them to be brown. So that's what happens is that as they cook, you may see them green when you first get them if they're fresh, but as they cook down, then they turn brown, and then at this point you can add them, or you can eat them actually at that point. When it comes to Puerto Rican food, arroz con gandules for me, I feel like it's really just like, I want to say that it's kind of cliche. It's kind of like, yo, we do more than this. You know what I mean? But we're doing it with pollo today, so we're making it different. We're making it different, you know. But arroz con gandules. And also, I want to talk a little bit about colonial food. I want to talk a little bit about the classism in a lot of this food. For example, like the olives, the olive oil, the capers, raisins, prunes. These are things that were not native to Puerto Rico. So if you had them and you put them in your food, that also put you at a different level where it was like, okay, you're at a different status. You can afford something that was imported and definitely cost a lot more money. So if you had olives in your food, you were actually stunning. You were out there stunning, showing off. So this is what it looks like. It really has a beautiful color. It's got like that brick red. It's got a really beautiful color if you can see there. And this is just the sauce. Now this is before we put in the rice. We have the seasoned chicken in there. We put some adobo in there that we made in the beginning of class. We put the gandules in there and the water, the water that the gandules, the salted water that the gandules were cooked in. Now is the perfect time where we should taste our food. And before we put anything, uh, before we put the rice in there, we should definitely now taste our food. So that's something that as home chefs, as home cooks, we don't do that enough. We do not taste our food. And we should definitely always taste our food before we serve it to our loved ones. So now I just want to taste it and then make any adjustments that is needed. That's good. All right. Yeah, I think that might be all right there. All right. So, cooking rice. This is the way that I do it. Actually, I've noticed that in Asian cooking, this is also how they do it. In restaurants, this is also a way to do it because you may have different size pots. And so what happens is you don't have time to say, oh, I want two, 2 cups of rice to 2 cups of water. No, we're not gonna do that. What we're gonna do is actually we're gonna use our finger, and we're gonna use the tip of our finger. And if you notice here, you see that line right there? That line in my finger? That's the line that we're going to use. And the rice is going to be under the water that much. So that is about an inch. Less than an inch, that's about 3/4 of an inch. That is exactly how much rice that we're gonna put in this hot water. That's it. Every time it'll work. Every time. So we have chicken in there and we have gandules. So we got to make sure that just mix it around a little bit, make sure that it's all covered up. This is going to be delicious. Oh, yeah. So there it is. I'm not going to stick my finger in there, but I could see by the spoon that the rice is right there, exactly there at where I want it, where I need it. If you guys do Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, there's an Asian guy called Uncle Roger. I think he's Chinese. And he does the same thing. Every time he does the finger trick, and it always works. I'm telling you.
Roberto, there's a
Yeah.
question from the audience.
Yeah.
What is your oldest cookbook? Where did you find it, and what does it mean to you?
Oh, Sonia, that is an amazing question, and it's called El Cocinero. El Cocinero is a cookbook from Puerto Rico from the 1850s, 1857, I believe. And so I have that book and I have a copy of it. Sometimes it fluctuates online. It may be sometimes $200, $300, but I happened to find it when it was cheap. And so El Cocinero is the book, and it's a cookbook of Puerto Rico in the 1850s. And so you would trip out by all the things that people ate back then. And I'm sure it's not only Puerto Rico, but everywhere around the world. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wasted. Everything was eaten.
Hey, Roberto, what about that cookbook by Carmen Aboy by De Juli called Cocina Criolla? Have you seen that book?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 versions of it.
That one is tight. That one is solid as well.
Yeah, I have that. I have that book. I have
Okay.
I have a good number of books in my library from Puerto Rico and the Caribbean and the South. I love Southern food. I love Creole food. I love Louisiana. I love soul food. Yeah,
Right on.
yeah, and you know, I love all the parallels that food has. You know, I used to cook back in the day. I used to cook at a soul food restaurant, and it was so beautiful just to see like all the links and all the things that paralleled black and brown folks.
Yeah. I'm proud of the red
So
beans.
this is
I'm proud of the red beans recipe that my family from New Orleans gave me. So I'm gonna put this gandule thing right next to it. You know.
oh man, please. So this is another thing that we don't do when we're making rice. So I have now let it dry up a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on low and I need to double cover it. So I'm going to get aluminum foil. Back in the day, we probably used to use banana leaf, but I don't have a banana leaf today. I could probably get it at my supermarket, but I just have aluminum foil. I'm gonna put some aluminum foil on there, and then I'm gonna cover it, and then all the magic's gonna happen. I'm gonna just step away. Yeah, I also have because you know I'm an old soul, so I like these old things. I have from Veracruz, Mexico. I also have a cookbook from the 1850s. That's also I had the chance also to cook in Veracruz. One of the places where I really enjoyed cooking was in Trinidad. I love if any of you guys know about Trini food, man. I love Trini food. So you see how I covered that up? And so I double sealed it. And we're gonna cover that up and let the magic happen.
Dibudín, dibudín. Dibudín, dibudán, dale que. Dale que. Dale que. Dale que. Oye, dale que. Me escucha boca. Dale que.
Hey, Roberto.
Yeah.
One thing I love about cooking and learning how to cook is like the special little details that make it really what it is. So I see the double
Yeah.
covering. Can you explain the reason behind that double covering of the rice?
Yeah. So the double covering is to trap the vapors. So if you allow for those vapors to come out, then your rice is not going to cook. So that's the technique is, and that's why we do that. And what we have often because they're banged up is we have imperfect pots. So the pots have the lids don't seal perfectly, and so that's why we do it.
Okay,
Yep.
right on. I'm getting hungry. I'm getting like my mouth is watering already.
Yeah, man. I really hope folks are cooking at home.
I already promised my mom that we're gonna reproduce this at the house as soon as we can get to it.
Lovely. Yeah. Professor, have you had Haitian food? Do you like Haitian food?
Yeah, in 2016, I had the chance to visit Port-au-Prince and eat up some tasso and you know what I
Mm.
mean. All that stuff is delicious, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the pickles, man, is always something that I love because just the texture and the spice that it adds. So
Yes,
this
sir.
is our little variation of pickles today.
Okay.
So, are you familiar with Ivelisse Diaz? She's the lead singer of Booyah.
No.
No? Okay, okay. Yeah, she's a bomba powerhouse, I would call her. She's also my best friend.
Okay. Right.
She's singing right now.
Yeah. It sounds amazing.
Oh yeah, she's a powerhouse.
Can she cook?
No, she cannot. That's why we've done we just recently did a cooking course at the University of DePaul, and I was cooking and we were doing music together. It was real fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. We did bomba, talked about the history of bomba at the same time we cooked. Yeah, it was real special.
Man, I want to play with you one day. Back in the day, I learned some bomba from the Cepeda family when they came to the Bay Area. So I want to rock with you one day, man.
Yeah, I would love that. I also build drums. So I just recently this weekend I just built a drum.
Oh wow. Some barriles or
Yeah,
playing
some barriles. Yeah. No,
okay.
some barriles. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. In Chicago, we really had a hard time You know, we couldn't back in the day. We couldn't afford to like buy them from artisans in Puerto Rico and then have them shipped. That was gonna be more than $600. So we just made them. We just started to learn. We learned how to make them about 25 years ago.
Mhm.
About 20 years ago, yeah.
Beautiful. Those are two like things that are so ancestral and powerful to be able to cook food from scratch and build a drum from scratch too. That's power, you know?
Oh man, that's awesome, man. Thank you.
Hmm.
So they often say, see how those vapors came out. Beautiful. So also towards the end is also a good time where you could add herbs. So I have some of this recao. This, you know, you could add some of this. Professor, are you familiar with Arif Smith? He's also one of the drummers from Booyah.
No, I know Tito Matos
Yeah,
and
Tito
you know
Matos, of
the Bell
course,
family, yeah. But
for
I haven't
sure.
haven't spent very much time in Puerto Rico. I want to go back. So I haven't had a chance to meet a lot of these people you mentioned. When you going?
Yeah. Well, and how about in Chicago though?
Oh, okay.
We're based in Chicago though, and actually Arif Smith has really traveled. He travels really well. I feel like you guys probably have crossed paths.
Okay.
He was also doing. He spent a lot of time at Williams College,
Okay.
and he's done work with Cynthia Renta. She's also one of the bomberas in New York,
Yeah.
in Jersey. Yeah,
Well, maybe you or
yeah. I
Cynthia
feel like
can.
you might know.
Yeah, maybe you or Cynthia can link us up. You know, I'm all about meeting folks like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, is this a dish, Roberto, that you would consider serving with plátanos maduros? You know, plantains or with tostones, that those double fried plantains.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Oh yeah, man. I think everything, everything with fried plantains, everything with maduros, everything with plantains. So yeah, all the time. Yes.
Yes.
I was just looking at my Instagram feed and I'm like, man, I make so much plantains, man. Everything's plantain. Plantain in every way. I was just laughing at myself.
Yes,
So,
sir.
you know, I love plantains, so
Okay.
but yeah, it's just a matter of this coming together. We're gonna let that steam, just cook that, and it should be done pretty soon. You
So,
know,
Roberto,
we should also, uh-huh.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, you know, we should always taste our food. So I want to just see where this is at. Maybe it needs more salt. It does need a little bit of salt, but it's nice and spicy. Woo! Yeah. And so as time goes, then as this just marinates together, it just becomes better. So you could put this in a jar, put this in your refrigerator, and then anytime like you're gonna make a sandwich, anytime you're gonna make anything that's savory, any rice dish or anything like that, anything fried, you put this on the side, and it's beautiful.
Nice.
Even with like a fried egg. Yep.
Hmm. What about bread? Does bread have a place in Puerto Rican cuisine or not so much?
Um, I went through this period where, I mean, my day always started with like fresh bread. So the bakeries, I think, in Puerto Rico, for example, yeah, they're really important. And so like my day and my experience in Puerto Rico has always been waking up and going to the bakery and getting some fresh bread every day. And that was kind of like the way you started. It's cheap and it's a way to feed yourself. And then it's also very versatile because you can do all types of things. So yeah, I definitely think that bread has something as far as my childhood and just starting my day. Bread was a big part of what I did, fresh bread especially.
Okay. But you wouldn't necessarily serve bread with this meal.
Yeah. Um, I wouldn't. I don't know why. I just don't see bread. I definitely see plantain,
Yeah.
but not necessarily bread for some reason.
Okay, okay.
But definitely plantain, definitely. Yep.
That looks good.
It actually just needs a little bit more time. I'm always told that you should leave the rice alone, let it do its thing. But I guess I got a little impatient with it, and that's why I seal it up, let it do its thing.
Yes.
Yep. In total, this has actually been on here for 45 minutes. So that chicken is done. The chicken
Mhm.
is definitely done. It has continued to cook, and the gandules were already done separately. And we added it, and we're just waiting for the grains of rice to cook.
Mhm. Nice. So Roberto, as we start to get to the end of our time, are there any last things that you would love to tell the audience about Urban Pilón or about Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans in Chicago or um, future plans for yourself as a chef? Are you going to open a restaurant? What would you like to leave us with?
So I have always been told that I should open a restaurant. People always ask that, and I always think to myself, man, would you be there? Would you help me out? Would you come to my restaurant? Would you support it? And right now, because of COVID, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I have not opened up a restaurant. Um, so I love the educational part of this whole process. I love that because our food is much deeper than just the cliche dishes with no history, with no story behind it. As I mentioned, some of this food is very classist, or some of this food really has history behind it. It comes from somewhere, and I think we should know these things. I think about documenting and the different ways of documenting, and maybe something like a cookbook is something. I know that the chefs from the mutual aid that I work with, they want to do maybe a cookbook together, but I want to also do my own. And so I've collected a lot of my recipes. I want to definitely continue my classes in Chicago and continue just to teach. I feel like a lot of us and people who hold knowledge, they hoard it and they keep it for themselves. And I don't want that to happen. If I know something and it tastes real good, I want you to know about it.
Yeah.
you know, because I want you to be able to cook it, because that's important to me, because if not, then that tradition dies. And that's not what I want.
Yeah.
That's not what I want. So as long as I could keep teaching and keep it going, and me as a person continue to learn, and I will continue to teach, and we all learn together as a community. And so that's what I want to do, just continue that journey.
So Roberto, before we have a look and a virtual taste of this arroz con gandules when it's ready, arroz con pollo, tell us briefly about one of the most surprising or special reactions someone ever gave to a dish that you prepared for them.
Um, so in Chicago, about 20 about 15 years ago, you know, I had decided that it was very hard for me to find mofongo in Chicago. But at that point in my life, I really didn't cook much. At least, definitely, I felt like mofongo was something that I wouldn't even know how to start, you know, like something that I just didn't think that I would be able to cook. But I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And next thing you know, I was also doing meals out of my house, like a paladar, right? Like a paladar in Cuba. And I used to, people would show up to my home. I would create a menu, and strangers would come through my doors and sit down. And for people that traveled well, that traveled in Puerto Rico, to say, man, this is the best mofongo I ever had, that was a big deal for me, because I knew that 10 years, 15 years ago, I had no idea how to even do it. But what I did was I wanted to fill that void that was in Chicago, because I didn't feel like there was good mofongo here, and there was not a good representative, not a good mofongo plate. And so I filled that void for that person. And so for me, that really, 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 really made me feel great. And I still remember that one person, but it had been repeated a few times. And so as those meals continued, because I started doing these events called the Mofongazo. And so it was all based on mofongo, and I would do mofongo in three different ways. And so yeah, I mean, I just blessed to have that outcome, but mostly because there was a void, and there was a drive in me that I wanted to do that, to fill that void.
Yes, sir. So we're almost at the end of our time. If it's possible, put some of that beautiful stuff on a plate and show it to us
Yeah, for
before we have
sure, for
to
sure.
try.
Oh, it looks beautiful too.
That looks good.
Oh yeah. So let me show you guys in this camera also.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm happy with it.
That's beautiful, and it was fast too. We started around 6:30, and it's already here for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do this often, so I kind of, yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
So this is an all-in-one. It's got the protein, it's got the beans, and so I did want to talk a little bit about pork, and like And man, I don't know, right, Umi? I mean, like when you talk about pork and like the Spanish Caribbean, pork is like can be like king sometimes, you know, and you can't really get away from it. Um, and so some of the conversations that I've had about it, some of the dialogue, some of kind of like the conflicts that I've had with it is that I know that also was something that was brought by the colonizers, and that it was the staple of Christianity that was enforced on people, and so that was a way also to ward off, you know, the Moors, and it was just something that to me it feels like colonialism. If
Mm,
you notice in a lot of my dishes, I'd just rather use chicken. I'd rather, and so you may see this with pork, but you know, because I am who I am and I love history and I know what is behind it, I'm gonna do chicken, I'm gonna do turkey. Um, and that's just kind of the way it is. But I think that that conversation has to be had. You know, it's like we really embrace it, but you know, what's the symbolism behind it? You know,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
so
Roberto, on behalf of the Center for Black Student Success, I want to really thank you for being with us here this evening, for sharing the cooking techniques that you brought to the table, as well as the rich history of Puerto Rico, and especially Puerto Rico as part of the Black African diaspora. We're going to take one more look
that's
at that
right.
beautiful plate, and then I'm going to close us out. Show us that plate, Roberto.
All right, there we go.
Esto, qué rico. Gracias, mi
It's still
hermano.
steaming, really nice and hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. I hope you guys learned a little bit. Actually, I hope you learned a lot. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time.
Okay, Professor. Thank you.
Yes. I want to take a moment to say thanks to all our viewing audience out there, no matter where you are. A special shout out, as always, to the CBSS family, all the Black students at CSU Monterey Bay. Thanks to the CBSS Action Team, which includes Brian Corpening, Professor Vanessa Lopez Littleton, um, Nijoni Chow Garcia, and Bernadette Ortiz. Thank you guys very much. Of course, thanks to our producer Sonia Pina, and again to Brother Roberto Perez and his organization Urban Pilón. If you want to support the great work that we're doing at CBSS, please don't hesitate to donate to our cause. Every little bit helps to provide this programming and the other aspects of our work, which include mentorship and research opportunities for Black students at CSU Monterey Bay. Thank you, and until next time. Our next event is on December 3rd. We'll be in conversation with music entrepreneur Nate Cameron. Join us. See you then. Bye-bye.
Entre